Why should we be doing morning meditation? Importance of catching your mind before it takes off first thing in the morning. So your mind, as soon as you wake up, is ready to look for danger, and it's ready to look for opportunity. And so essentially your brain, as soon as you wake up, is looking for how can it find as much pleasure as it can find, and how can it avoid as much pain as it can find. And in the immediate outset, that sounds like a really great idea, and that we can get lots of pleasure and we can avoid lots of pain. But let me assure you, that brain that's seeking to find pleasure and avoiding pain is actually seeking short-term pleasure, which brings long-term pain, and avoiding short-term pain, which brings long-term pain as well. So your brain, although it thinks that it's doing the right thing, which it is in its immediate outset, that brain and how your brain is, as soon as it wakes up, looking for avoiding as much pain as it can and trying to get as much pleasure as it can. It's trying to avoid exercise, it's trying to avoid meditation, it's trying to avoid getting up early, it's trying to avoid doing all of the things that you want to do, and it wants to eat donuts, ice cream, sleep in, and watch Netflix. Most people anyway. And so that brain that's trying to avoid the pain of doing the things that it knows is good for it and procrastinating on that and looking for as much pleasure as it can find is going to find that the pleasure that it's actually looking for is detrimental in the long run, and that pain is going to cause great suffering for us. And then the pleasure that it's looking to seek is in all of those things that are going to cause long-term pain as well. So the brain, the reptilian primitive brain, and also entire brain is looking for that pain and pleasure out of conditioning. It's looking to find things that are as comfortable as possible, especially when it's in stress or distress. It's looking for as much comfort as possible, and it's looking to avoid as many things as it can. And in the avoidance of doing those things that you know that you should be through procrastination, and in looking for as much pleasure as you can, most likely being in food to get some certainty or variety, most likely in Netflix or YouTube or Facebook and all of these kinds of things, which inevitably are not fulfilling in the long term, then we end up feeling really empty. And so for me, and what I see with other people, is meditation first thing in the morning is so important to be able to catch that brain so that it's not on its trajectory of trying to avoid pain and trying to gain pleasure in ways that inevitably leads to long-term suffering. So doing your meditation first thing in the morning is catching that lizard brain before it takes off and starts looking for as much pleasure as it can and avoiding as much pain as it can. It's catching it and it's saying, sit down and turn that off. So that actually what you're doing is functioning from your frontal lobe and not functioning from the brainstem. And there's a large majority of the population, including myself, on the planet that's going through states of stress and lowering our consciousness down into our reptilian brain functions and avoiding pain and looking for that pleasure. So it's really important that first thing as you wake up, you don't go, right, now, what's the pain and pleasure that I'm going to look for and avoid? You want to catch that brain and go, right, sit down and let's get centered on what's important. Let's get grounded. Let's get connected to our hearts. Let's bring more blood and oxygen and glucose into our forebrain so that we're operating from an intelligent state rather than from a fight-flight unintelligent state. So again, I've done my meditation, and the thoughts that came up for me today to want to share with you guys, and I'm only sharing from my own experience, is that when I wake up in the morning, if I don't catch my brain and tell my brain what to do and how to do it and discipline it, it's going to take off and be avoiding as much pain as it can, which is my taxes, my work, getting back to people, dealing with problems, exercise, meditation. It wants to avoid all of that stuff. And it wants to go into finding pleasure, and that is it wants to eat food, which is why I intermittent fast and I don't eat until after around 4-5 o'clock every day, so that I'm disciplining that part of the brain. And so I have to catch my brain, otherwise it's off and that dinosaur is just roaming around my life and wreaking havoc. So as soon as I wake up, I'm up out of bed, I am straight to water, straight to get my clothes on. Rain, hail or shine makes no difference. I'm out here walking in nature, and then ready to meditate. And that's just me taking control of my brain first thing in the morning before it takes off. So that's just in answer in response to some of the questions I've had. Is it important to do it first thing in the morning? We have 2 meditations, and so that first meditation, the one that I've to stimulate your nervous system, to get things moving, get your lymphatic system moving, get some nitric oxide into your body, get the chemistry right so that you're ready to go, but also to get you into that frontal lobe, that prefrontal cortex, and turning off these fight-flight centers and stress receptors inside of the primitive brain and coming more into that executive center of the brain, or the CEO of the brain, so that we are in control of the body and the brain, or the brain and the body first thing in the morning, rather than being dragged throughout our day. If you feel like sometimes your brain is dragging you through your day, or your emotions are dragging you through your day, because I certainly feel like sometimes if I'm not in control, my brain and body is actually determining what's happening rather than me choosing what I'm thinking about and choosing what I'm feeling. So again, for me, meditation is about catching that brain, disciplining that brain first thing in the morning, so that I'm managing and controlling the chemistry of my brain and body, the direction of my thoughts, and therefore the reactions that has with the chemistry in my body and my behavior. And then my behavior is reflected in my world, and therefore I'm in control of my world. But if I'm not taking control of my thoughts first thing in the morning, then I'm just running a program, or being dragged through my life by a program. So if sometimes you feel like you've been dragged through your life by your brain and you're not necessarily in control, then these meditation practices are for you, because I can share from experience from somebody that came from quite challenging circumstances as a child, lots of domestic violence, lots of drug abuse, lots of alcohol abuse. I was homeless at the age of 50. I had a girlfriend that committed suicide. I was in trouble with the law. I was caught up with all of the wrong people. And so for me, I've really had to work hard to get control back over my brain and body through all of that trauma. And I know everybody on here has had trauma and experienced trauma, and we're all experiencing trauma right now. And so I believe that my experience of being able to overcome myself is something that I can share with you guys. So even if you haven't had the experience of learning how to control that mind and body yet, today really is an opportunity for you to just try something new and notice how you feel afterwards. These are not my theories. They're not just beliefs. These are scientific, irrevocable truths that I've learnt, these tools that I've learnt, and they have had a huge impact on my life, and they're proven. They're not just what works for me. They are what's proven to work when people do these things. When you breathe in a certain way, it creates a certain chemistry. It turns on and off certain parts of your brain, and they're just facts. So the more you trust in this process, the more you let go and just follow the process, the more that you learn about how to do the process, the deeper and more profound its effects will be.